Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. Good evening, everyone. Our mission at Duncanville ISD is to engage, equip, and empower all scholars to achieve their unique potential. We will now go into closed session. Okay, we are back from closed session. We will continue with our agenda items. We will now move to take action on items from closed session. Do I have a motion to approve the superintendent's recommendation to extend one-year term administrator contract to the listed professional staff members for 2021 and 2022, the 2021-2022 school year? Trustee McNeely moved and Trustee Savage Martin seconded the motion. Are there any questions, comments, or discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Any opposed? Motion passed, 7-0. Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the superintendent's recommendation to extend one-year term professional contract to the listed professional staff members for the 2021-2022 school year?
So moved.
Second.
Trustee Vera Cruz moved and Trustee Savage Martin seconded the motion. Are there any questions, comments, or discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Opposed? None. Motion passed, 7-0. Thank you, Board. Do I have a motion to approve the superintendent's recommendation to extend one-year non-certified contract to the listed professional staff members for the 2021-2022 school year?
So moved. Oh,
Okay. Who moved on that one? Okay, thank you. Trustee Fahey moved and Trustee Colton seconded the motion. Are there any questions, comments, or discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Any opposed? Trustee Vera Cruz, I didn't see your hand, I'm sorry. Was that for in favor?
no, yes.
Okay, thank you. There were no opposed, correct? Okay, motion passed, 7-0, thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the superintendent's recommendation to take no action on the contracts for the listed professional staff members for the 2021-2022 school year?
So moved.
Okay, y'all have to stop doing this to me. Was that Trustee Vera Cruz?
Yes, ma'am.
And Trustee McNeely was the second? Oh, I'm sorry. Trustee Vera Cruz moved and Trustee McNeely seconded the motion. Are there any questions, comments, or discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Opposed? None. Motion passed, 7-0. Thank you, Board. We will now move to opening ceremonies, and Trustee Vera Cruz will lead us in the invocation as we start the opening ceremonies.
Thank you,
Trustee
Madam
Vera Cruz.
President. Well, please bow your heads. Heavenly Father, we come united seeking guidance, wisdom, and support as we begin this meeting. Help us to engage in meaningful discussions and nurture the bonds of community. We are thankful for the period of rest and rejuvenation that was given to our school community. Lord, we join our hearts together that you enable us to hear you clearly, to listen to each other attentively, to imagine our future, to stay together in charity, to embrace the greater good, to hand on your gifts to the future generations. Lord, fill us with your grace as we make decisions that may affect the students, staff, and educators. We ask these things in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Trustee Vera Cruz. Trustee Colton will lead us in the pledges. Trustee Colton. Thank you, Trustee Colton. We will now move on to the superintendent's report. I will now turn it over to Dr. Smith.
All right, thank you, Madam President. Good evening, board members again, and staff members and community members. I have a few items that I'd like to report on this evening. The first, we obviously had a great weekend this past weekend. We've concluded the basketball season this year. First, would like to congratulate and recognize the Pantherettes. They had an outstanding season. Making it as far as they did in the playoffs was a exceptional feat, and their loss was to the eventual state champions. And so we want to recognize them as well for the work that they've done this season. Also, then our boys, of course, our boys won the state championship this past weekend. It was outstanding to see their hard work, their commitment, and their will to win, basically. They played a really great team. They have some outstanding students on that basketball team that are going to some outstanding universities. And so they really were a good representation of what Duncanville ISD is all about. So while, yes, it was exciting to see them win the state championship, it's also exciting to know the things that they're doing off the court and how they represent us. And so we recognize them. They will be joining us at an upcoming board meeting, presenting the board with medals and other items that they have, that they're working on to present to the board. So we want to congratulate them for the culture that they are establishing, and it's hard to replace a legend, and so it's hard to keep that going, and so they had a really good year this year. The next slide, please. The next item that I wanted to share with you all is on our Texas Association of Future Educators. That's one of our many programs that we have at Duncanville High School, and I'd like to say that education is in good hands if these young people are truly committed to being in education, and by their efforts and the things that they've done, they certainly have shown that commitment. And so we have 23 Duncanville High School students that competed in the state competition, and so we had 14 of those students to actually win state honors, and we had 7 that are advancing to the nationals. And this was a virtual competition that took place March 4th through March 6th. And the students met with university representatives from top universities, and then they also had the opportunity to position themselves to earn scholarships. And they are committed at this early time in their career to be future educators. And so we certainly want to recognize them and support them in all of their accomplishments and things that they are doing. Next slide, please. I brag around to other superintendents. I listen to their horror stories, so to speak, as it relates to dealing with board members. And I feel, very fortunate that I have an opportunity to work with you. And so I wanted to recognize the good work that you've done. This has been a very difficult year. A lot of people are hurting in a lot of ways and have experienced a lot of pain with family loss and financial issues and all the life challenges that, we all are too familiar with. And so I wanted to just recognize the service that extends into the community and the servant heart and mindset that our board members have. And so, whether it be our coat drive and the more than 200 coats that were distributed as part of the 3rd annual Duncanville ISD Trustees Coat Drive, even into March, you're still working toward providing needs for students and families, and then the work that you did for those that were impacted either in the winter storm or the fire that occurred over in the townhomes. Duncanville Townhomes, I believe, is the actual name of that complex. And so it was good to see the items that you all rallied together to provide families. It's going to provide those families with meals, provide those families with things that we take for granted, that have played a huge, huge role in helping them manage some very difficult times. And so I wanted to, on their behalf, say thank you. I mean, they dealt with frozen pipes, lack of heat, being displaced, and the cards, the gift cards, and the other items that you provided for those members of the community were absolutely awesome. And so I wanted you to know that it is very much appreciated, and people see and know what you're doing to make a difference in our district. So I wanted to thank our board for that. The last item that I wanted to report on is our COVID-19 vaccinations. You know, I've been committed to creating opportunities for Duncanville ISD employees to receive a vaccination. And so there are several opportunities that have been available to us. Three, for sure, the Methodist Church, Methodist Charlton, and Parkland are two organizations that we are partnering with to provide vaccinations for our staff. And so this Friday, we're going to have the Methodist Charlton Hospital here in the district. They're going to be over at Duncanville High School, and they've set aside 1,000 vaccinations for Duncanville ISD employees, not just teachers, but Duncanville ISD employees. The Parkland project was just for teachers. That's just how they categorized it for them. And so, you know, you see Ms. Rainey here. There are many of our staff members that have already received a vaccination. She happened to make the news that day. And so she works at the high school, and she's received her vaccination. So my goal is to have, you know, 80–90% of our staff at the start of next school year with a vaccination. And so it's been a collective effort of our senior leadership team, really beating the path, trying to seek out opportunities with various organizations. And so we've been really fortunate to be on a lot of lists early on, and that has put us in the position to be able to provide this opportunity for our staff. We did some surveying, and we had about 43% of our staff responding, and so we have about 31% of our staff that have already received at least one dose of the vaccination, and so that is about 400 or so employees. So the efforts that will be put in place on Friday, as well as the next several weeks, we'll see those numbers increase. So really good things for our staff as we try to get them vaccinated and get people healthy and feeling comfortable and safe as we end this school year, about 11 weeks to go, and then transition for next school year. So those are the items that I have, Madam President.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. We will now move to recognitions. I will turn the meeting over to Ms. Tiara Richard.
Nope, there we go. It just took a second. Good evening, Madam President, Board of Trustees, Dr. Smith. Anytime that we get an opportunity to come before you and celebrate the great things happening in the school district, it is an honor and a privilege to be able to do so. So this is our last month for Made with Pride recognitions for this school year, because as we get closer to the end of the school year, a lot of the recognitions are switching to closing out the year, looking at our seniors and so forth. But today we want to celebrate our Made with Pride in Duncanville teacher, student, and staff of the month. I'll start off with our student. So I'd like to invite into the room our recognition for Miss Daniella Pedraja. She actually could not make it today, but in her place, we have her principal here to accept her award. So Ms. Thomas. So Ms. Thomas is here on behalf of Ms. Pedraja. We checked in with her right before the meeting started, but she just couldn't make it here. But we wanted to make sure we still took the time to honor her and celebrate her for all she's done. And you'll also get a chance to see a little bit more about her in the video that we do, obviously, at the end of the recognitions. But let me tell you a little bit about Ms. Pedraja and why Ms. Thomas is one of those people who's just so proud of what she does. So Daniella is a senior in the Collegiate Academy, and as we know, this year is the first graduating class of the Collegiate Academy. And so she will graduate in May with her associate's degree as well as her diploma from Duncanville High School. So she is getting a head start on life. So Daniella is not only a great student, which she obviously is, she's also just an amazing young woman. She was actually nominated by teacher Dedrick Williams. Many of us know Dedrick because he does so much at the high school, and this particular student stood out to him and he wanted to talk about her. She serves as senior class officer, is an active member of student council, youth and government, and the Duncanville High School choir. We actually surprised her in her choir class whenever we did the recognitions, and she was completely surprised and caught off guard and super, super grateful for the honor. While juggling all of those things, she still maintains a stellar grade point average. She is one of those super respectful students, a very poised student, and she's an encouragement to any educator who has the opportunity to teach her. She was always looking out for the needs of others. She is meticulous. Ms. Pedraja. Can you hear me now? There we go. So she is just super detail-oriented and a wonderful, wonderful student. And so it's with great honor today that even though Ms. Pedraja could not be here, that we celebrate with Ms. Thomas and honor her as our Made with Pride in Duncanville Student of the Month. Up next, we have our Teacher of the Month, Miss Melissa Wilkes. All right, so Miss Wilkes here is a SPED teacher at Bill Hart's Elementary School. And she was actually nominated by a former Bill Hart's parent by the name of Miss Raquel Gomez. See, Miss Gomez's son did advance to intermediate school, but she spent the large part of her career working with Miss Wilkes with her son. She said that Miss Wilkes is one of those people who just takes notes of where students are struggling and just finds ways to target those weaknesses to really lift kids up. She goes above and beyond for her kids. She knows that if a child is having a hard time, she finds unique ways to motivate that child. For example, for her child, he was having a hard time sort of gripping items, and so she bought him a box of fat pencils. And then when he didn't like his fingers touching, he was just uncomfortable with that, she got a finger placement holder for him. So she just notices the little things and really helps, supports, and makes things special for her students. She is knowledgeable about education, but she also just is amazingly knowledgeable about the autism spectrum also. And when you have that skill set and that knowledge and you can apply it to what you're doing in education, it's special, it's unique. It's the sort of thing that parents thrive on, our students learn with, and it's just a special opportunity. This parent wanted to be here tonight because she really celebrates and loves the support that Ms. Wilkes has provided, but she just is really grateful for everything that she has seen with Ms. Wilkes at Bill Hart's Elementary School. And so for this and so many other reasons, we want to honor and celebrate Ms. Wilkes as our Made with Pride in Duncanville Teacher of the Month. Thank you. And last but not least for our Made with Pride honorees, our staff member of the month that we were recognizing is custodian Mr. Ruben Solis. So Mr. Solis is another person who couldn't make it tonight, and I think the weather may have had some of the parts to do with this, but Mr. Solis could not be here this evening. But he is a custodian at Summit Education Center. And as you'll see in the video, Mr. Solis is one of those people who thrives on doing his best for his school. He believes and knows that he makes a difference every day for students and staff. He greets people with a genuine smile. He enters the building and the office with a positive attitude and just in a really great mood. He is one of those people that he doesn't complain. He just comes in and tries to find solutions and try to support and lift up the campus. So he's always willing to help and find solutions at whatever task he's asked. The person who nominated Mr. Solis is the school counselor, Ms. Aridia Marsh-Smith, and she said that she just loves talking to Mr. Rubin about faith and family, and he will engage with her and just really provide that level of support. So it's a family atmosphere, and he feeds into that. So for this, and again, so many other reasons, we are honored today to recognize Mr. Ruben Solis as our Made with Pride in Duncanville Staff of the Month. And now I'll turn it over to the video so you can see a little bit more about all of these honorees.
Duncanville ISD congratulates the following student, staff member, and teacher who are made with pride in Duncanville.
Mr. Rubin is such a joy to be around. When you come into the building, he's the one who is here first thing in the morning, greeting us, smiling face, and he's the one who ensures that this building is safe and secure. Mr. Rubin is someone who you can always talk to about anything, regardless of the subject, and he's just a great motivator and inspirer.
Well, I just think it's an important job, you know, to do. I just love what I do. Really make me feel good because they notice, you know, that I was doing my job, and I really appreciate it, you know, for them, you know, recognizing what I'm doing.
Thank you, Mr. Rubin, for everything that you do for us at the summit.
So Daniella Pedraja is one of the most genuine and hardworking students that I've ever taught. She's one of those that never allows herself to be broken. She's always going to find a way to keep going. She's always going to find a way to be successful. She cares about everybody that she comes in contact with. So that's why I nominated her for Duncanville Made with Pride.
Daniella is so deserving of this recognition. She is a student that is always thoughtful. She helps her fellow classmates. She's focused on her academics, and she's also just a well-rounded scholar. She participates in choir as well as numerous other activities.
I love my students are my kids forever and always. And I've been fortunate enough here at Bill Hart's. A lot of my kids, especially my kids that are in 4th grade now, I think probably what's most rewarding for me is being able to work with kids and seeing them succeed even in just the smallest things, that just the excitement that they have, the joy that I have in being able to see them achieve things that maybe a lot of people think that they wouldn't have been able to do.
These honorees truly are made with pride in Duncanville.
So next on the recognitions agenda, we have donations. And this month, we have no new donations since our last board meeting. So our next item on the agenda for recognitions is the Texas School Public Relations Award. So I will ask my team to please come up, the Communications Department team. Please forgive them. They're so used to being behind the scenes that it's really difficult to step in front like this. So the Communications Department's team, I'm just really honored to stand before you today to recognize this team because they work really hard. They're dedicated, they're committed. This is a group of employees who is just seriously committed to excellence. They focus on sharing the amazing stories that make Duncanville ISD so special to our families, to our staff, and to our community. And so I wanted to introduce them to you just in case you don't know them. You've seen them plenty, but I want to make sure that you know them by name, all of them. So first up we have, in the middle, we have Ms. Laurie Berger. She's our Director of External Communications. To her left is Lucy Mouton, formerly Lopez. She changed her name after getting married over a year ago. And then, of course, Ms. Hillary Hobson, who you see regularly at meetings. Not here tonight with us are Carol Ritteman and Mary Fallon. Miss Mary Fallon's our front desk receptionist, and Carol Ritteman. They each will also be receiving some hardware of their own in terms of awards. Because of the awards we received this year at the Texas School Public Relations Awards, we received a total of 19 awards. And that's a tremendous amount. It was really a lot of work to submit the awards to make sure that we were submitting the right ones. And of those 19 awards, 12 were Gold Star Awards, 6 were silver, and 1 was bronze. And these were for entries in categories including publishing news releases, photography, poster and marketing, image packages, just various things including videos and so forth. And from those gold categories, you have the opportunity to qualify for best in category. And so we had 2 of our gold awards that won best in category. The first one were selected by the judges as best in category was the 3-part documentary featuring the Duncanville High School Band's long legacy of high achievement and excellence that we produced last year, Ain't No Band. And so that documentary series got a lot of rave reviews, and that was a collective effort. That's one of those honors that no one person could have pulled this together, although we had leadership to make that happen. It takes a team to be able to make something like that happen, which is one of the reasons why Carol and Mary are also being celebrated with us tonight, because they were there editing, they were there taking care of other things so that we can make sure that that documentary came out consistently during that time period. And so again, a documentary is not an easy feat, but the work paid off, and we're super proud of the product that we produced in the end. In addition to that, the other top entry that received the best in category was a press release made by Laurie Berriger, which generated media coverage about the Pace High School's decision in the 2019-2020 school year to limit cell phone use at the campus. And so that press release produced quite a bit of news coverage locally, nationally, in trade magazines. It's one of those stories that kept going on and on. You'd push it out once, and by the time we got to the end of the year, it had come out multiple times over the year. And because that's the work that Laurie put in to make sure that that press release really told the story of what was going on at Pace and the efforts being occurring there. So again, I'm very proud of the team, grateful for all of you do, and just wanted to make sure that we had an opportunity to celebrate the excellence of our communications department. So thank you all. All right, last but not least for recognitions tonight, we have our youth and government team. The officers are here to receive some recognition for the awards they received at state this year. All right, so like so many other events, Youth and Government State Conference was virtual. The Youth and Government, it can be challenging to describe to someone because people get sports, they know what they are, but Youth and Government is its own sort of sports event. It's where students are challenged to participate in legislative, judicial, and media and political processes as part of competitions, and this grows understanding of government and how it works. Youth and Government is such a active and involving event that it increases civic responsibility amongst students. It produces young adults who choose to vote, who choose to volunteer. It produces great citizens, and we see that in the students we have here. So today, I wanted to make sure that we recognize Mr. Jalen Robinson. He was named the governor for the second time in Duncanville history. You may remember the other one was Sharif Long just a few years ago. It's rare for a school district, much less our region, to have 2 governors selected at Youth and Government in their legislative session. It's amazing. And so, Mr. Robinson, we want to congratulate you for that honor. Let me name some of the other officers. We also have our print editor-in-chief, Jamie Bowers. Photojournalism editor-in-chief, Cassandra Zapata. Social media editor-in-chief, Evan Lee. Broadcast executive producer, Adham Atik. Did I say that right? Adam Atik. And so the thing about this group of youth and government officers and all of the work they did, the other thing that's really noticeable is that At every youth and government statewide event, officers are selected and chosen, and our 5 officers are very special. But there are 10 positions in the entire state. 10. Duncanville had 5 of those. And these are your 5 officers who represented Duncanville and represent the state of Texas for youth and government. And so it's a big honor. I'm sure you will continue to hear more about these really innovative and creative and outstanding students, and definitely with Mr. Kane and all the work that he does with youth and government. So thank you again, and we want to congratulate all of our youth and governor honorees. And that concludes recognitions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Richard. And congratulations. You all are awesome.
Thank you, Mr. Kane and Yaggers.
Okay, we will now move to communication from citizens to discuss pending agenda items before the board. And we do not have any communications from citizens regarding a pending agenda item, so we will now move to take action on items discussed in closed session. We will now move to the consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
Yes, we would like to move item 7E to the action agenda items.
Okay. Do I have a second? Trustee Savage Martin moved. And Trustee McNeely seconded the motion to move action item,
8D.
8D?
I'm
Eight.
sorry.
You said
From
7E?
7E
Okay,
to the action.
7E
7E,
to the
sorry.
action agenda.
Did.
Thank you. Are there any questions, comments, or discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand high. All opposed, none? Okay, thank you. Motion passed 7-0. Okay, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended? Trustee Colton moved.
Second?
Yeah, we're going to do that next. I'm going to go there. I'm going to go to the action, and then, yeah, I got it. Thank you. Trustee Colton moved, and Trustee Janice Savage Martin seconded the motion.
Point. He said we just voted on it, so that would be true. We'd need to do them at the same time. One moving out, one moving in. Good point.
Okay, so do you want to go back and just?
Yes, I'd like to amend my motion that we move item 7E to the action items, and that we move item 8D to the consent agenda items.
Okay. So we are moving item 7E to the action agenda item and item 8D to the consent. And that was moved by Janice Savage Martin and seconded by Trustee McNeely. Are there any questions, comments, or discussion? Okay, all those in favor, again, please raise your right hand high. Opposed, none. Okay, that motion has passed 7-0. Okay, so now we're going to approve the consent agenda as amended. Do I have a motion for that? Trustee Colton moved.
Second?
Trustee Savage Martin seconded the consent agenda be approved as amended. Are there any questions, comments, or discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Opposed? None. Motion passed 7-0. Okay, thank you, Board. We will now move on to action agenda item A, resolution regarding payment of employees during the February 2021 winter storm emergency, and the presenter is Dr. Ed Bigby.
Good evening, Madam President, Board of Trustees, Dr. Smith. I don't have to remind any of you that we had 7 days of snowmageddon, and by policy, EB local, the superintendent has the ability to close school when it's a safe situation. He did that. We continued to pay the hourly employees during that time as allowed by DEA local, which also says that once we come to a meeting afterwards, after the employees have been paid, then the board needs to approve a resolution that actually back approves the paying of those individuals. There were 347 individuals that kept being paid that wouldn't have been paid during that time, and it was around $160,000 for them. We also had 71 people who came out and worked during that in the buildings, and they were paid time and a half for their work there, and that was about $6,000 more. So a total of $165,000 to cover the cost of those individuals continuing to be paid. And that's what this resolution asks you to approve, the payment of those individuals. Be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Do I have a motion in regards to the resolution regarding payment of employees during the February 2021 winter storm emergency?
So moved.
Trustee Savage Martin moved. Second. Trustee Colton moved. Thank you. Trustee Colton seconded the motion. Are there any questions, comments, or discussion? Okay. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Opposed? None. Motion passed 7-0. Thank you, Dr. Bigby. We will now move to action item B, Instructional Materials, Proclamation 2021, Textbook Adoption, and the presenter is Dr. Kathy Sewell.
Good evening, Madam President, Board of Trustees, and Dr. Smith. As you will recall, last month I presented Proclamation 2021 and the committee recommendations for pre-kindergarten systems for the adoption to be implemented in the 21-22 school year. The committee evaluated various materials, and the district offered overviews and access for parents as part of the subcommittee during Parent University, and also online access and kits available at the schools. Next slide. So thus, this evening, I do seek approval from the Board of Trustees to purchase the recommended instructional materials that you can see here on this slide. Included in the purchase are 18 classroom packages in English, 13 classroom packages in Spanish, and 13 biliteracy packages for biliteracy, both English and Spanish. All packages include digital materials for the life of the adoption. And as you can see, the costs are also posted there. Next slide. So in closing, again, the committee recommendation was to approve the purchase of Savas 3 Cheers for Pre-K, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have at this time.
Do I have a motion in regards to the Instructional Materials Proclamation 2021 textbook adoption? Trustee McNeely moves.
Second.
I'm sorry, was that Trustee Veracruz?
Second.
Trustee Veracruz seconded the motion. Are there any questions, comments, or discussion?
I have a question.
Trustee Ivory?
What was the criteria used to select this curriculum for the pre-K?
The criteria was a rubric based upon various elements. I believe there were 17 regarding phonics, social emotional learning, diversity in terms of authors and cultural celebrations, as well as center thematic units and the pacing and order of the materials as teachers liked them.
Okay, I was looking for that cultural. Thank you for that.
Yes,
so
ma'am.
The material, the representation of the characters or students, it's pretty diverse.
Yes, absolutely. That was a big selling point for the committee. It was
That's
a good fit for Duncanville for us.
Great.
Yes,
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions, comments, or discussion?
I have one other question.
Trustee Ivory?
The 8 year, is there any particular reason why we decided to do an 8-year license for the program and we haven't used it yet?
Usually the adoption cycles last through the State Board of Education. Those cycles go every 8 years. And so that's the life of the adoption, so that's why we recommended to do the 8 years for the life of the adoption leading into 8 years in the future. The state will bring that back up again to re-up the materials.
Okay. And last question, how will we monitor the success of this particular curriculum? How will we evaluate whether this is working or?
Well, we will begin our ordering when working with our vendor, and then we'll do our training when teachers arrive back for the next school year. And then as we monitor pre-K, we have the CLI assessment, which is a beginning and middle and end of the year. So we'll use that as a data point as well as classroom observations, and then also we'll engage in anecdotal surveys.
Okay. Is this replacing something different?
It is. It's replacing our current pre-K materials, and I would have to defer to Ms. Reyes on what those materials are. I believe it's Big Day Scholastic, but I'd have to defer to her.
Okay.
Good evening, Madam President, Dr. Smith, board members. The curriculum we're using right now is Frog Street, so it'll be replacing that.
Okay, so it is replacing something,
Yes,
it's
ma'am.
not in addition to? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions, comments, or discussion? Okay. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Any opposed? None. Motion passed 7-0. Thank you, Dr. Sewell.
All right, thank you.
We will now move to action item C, approval of asbestos abatement at Reed Middle School, Pace High School, and Duncanville High School Field House. The presenter is Ms. Andrea Fields.
Good evening, Madam President, board members, and Dr. Smith. Tonight, it is my pleasure to present for your consideration and approval the vendors for abatement services for the district at Reed Middle School, Pace High School, and DHS Baseball Fieldhouse. As you have quite a few documents in your board book, I would like to briefly review those with you to make sure we have the context. We have quite a few documents. They start on page 78 and end on page 106. And of course, behind the agenda item, you have the list of the evaluators. There are 3 individuals there who are all staff members, and one being the Director of Maintenance, Mr. Joe Paterka. You also have the scoring documents for each of the 3 projects, along with the total cost sheet, which of the cost is on page 89. Additionally, you have the cost sheet by vendor and project, followed by some notes. And lastly, you have 3 proposals from MatCorp, which is the environmental group that supports us as consultant for the project. As you're aware, the state of Texas Department of Health requires districts to have an asbestos management plan. And so this includes all the buildings that we own, et cetera, all the ones we lease. And so we have to submit a plan each year. And per our policy, we are to maintain that, update it periodically. Each year, we are to have an update on every campus. And so through our walkthroughs with our consultant, this is how we kind of come to this point, some of the work that was done as they walked our facilities this past year. With these particular 3 projects, we invited 14 vendors who have already been awarded bids by various cooperatives to quote the 3 locations. So they were already approved and awarded bids already. So it's not the RFP process as we did perhaps with the tumble chiller, if y'all remember that from last year, the buses. These 14 vendors already do this type of work. So that's the difference in what we're presenting to you tonight. So it helps us save money, time, et cetera. And so this really helps us a lot. All of these vendors are vetted, licensed to do this type of work. Of the 14 that were invited, 7 companies attended our district walkthrough of the 3 buildings. That was before the snowstorm on February the 8th. 2 companies submitted bids. And of course, due to the winter storm, the deadline for submission of the bids was pushed back. We wanted to give the people, we notified all of them, let them know, because we were kind of still out when we were supposed to receive the quotes. So tonight, CCS Custard Construction Services and RNDI companies submitted the bids, and we're asking for your approval to award to Custard Construction the projects at Reed Middle School and Pace High School, and award RNDI the project at Duncanville High School baseball field house. Included in the cost of the project, which is on page 89, the total there is $570,884. The bids presented were the lowest for each individual project. Additionally, board, it includes pricing for the base bid, and you may see on that cost sheet where it says it had item 1, item 2, then it had an alternate. I want to share with you what that meant. Item 1 is the base to do the work. Item 2 was because we're looking at windows at the 2 schools, and so there are blinds there. And so we asked them, what would you quote us to take them down, clean them, and put them back? We didn't want that because we know if the windows are affected, the blinds probably are affected. So the alternate is to replace all of the blinds. That's why you see the $40,000+. Some of the questions, one, just make sure we're safe. That was out of an abundance of caution. So I want to explain that to you because I know that was on the cost sheet there. So we're going with that. The total and also that you have includes the $69,000 plus for MatCore. You all didn't know this is very, could be dangerous work. We have to mobilize. We have to make sure it's secure. No one can be there on the premises when this happens. And so this group is a licensed group. They do this work. They do the testing. They're the ones who test even if it's other things like paint and things like that. So they're an approved group, and they've been our consultant in our district for several years, so we have a great relationship with them. They will report everything to the state of Texas. They've already started the work helping us to get ready to prep for this. The timeline is June 10th through the 23rd of July. Short time, but really not. Because we're starting school earlier, but it is our intent, as soon as we get your approval, to start working through to get ready for that, because we'd have to do it after school is over, and that's as soon as we could. I think the last day of school is June the 7th. So we're trying to get that done and then in before staff and students return back to school. We've worked with leadership in athletics and of the campuses of scheduling around anything that they have. They are already have been made aware. And our deadline is the 23rd of July. That's what we've submitted to the state. And if we do not complete it, include in your package, you see the $1,500 per day. We'll be fined if we do not get to. So it is our recommendation that you approve these 3 projects, 2 going to Custard Construction and the baseball field house to RNDI. And I'm happy to entertain any questions for you tonight.
Do I have a motion in regards to the approval of asbestos abatement at Reed Middle School, Pace High School, and Duncanville High School baseball field house?
So moved.
Second. Was that?
Second.
Who moved? Trustee Vera Cruz, thank you. And Trustee Savage Martin seconded the motion. Are there any questions, comments, or discussion?
I just want to say thank you, Mrs. Fields, for that report. You answered my questions regarding the safety, and
Yes.
that was my concern, so thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
I'd like to make a comment just for clarification, because the agenda made me think of one thing, and then even the detail told me, pointed me in a different direction. It's not the DHS Fieldhouse football.
Correct.
Okay? It's not that new building, nor is it the baseball stadium. It is a very old building.
Yes, ma'am.
That way back in the day, when I was in high school here, it was an ROTC, and baseball kind of grabbed onto it too, and I think they still have it now. So it is a very old building.
Thank you so much for that clarification. That's why I kept saying baseball. We did not put it here, but I apologize for that. But I wanted to make sure you all knew that it was the baseball. It's not our regular stadium. It's in good shape.
Any other questions, comments, or discussion for Ms. Fields?
I have some.
Trustee
Some
Fahey?
questions, yes, and thank you, Ms. Fields. I'm going to have to watch that again to get everything that I probably missed. But all three of those buildings are very old buildings. And
Yes,
like
ma'am.
Janice was saying, the baseball field house was the armory. And some of the walls where they really had real guns and real bullets. I mean, they're thick and there's no windows. Where Pace is currently, it had been the Duncanville Education Center, the DEC, which was our second administration building. That before that, it was part of Reed. Well, every time we went in to renovate, whether it was an aging facility or a bond package or whatever, I thought asbestos had been removed. And I'm always surprised when more asbestos is found. And I understand how it can be found in spots. But I thought once it was found, all of that had to be removed. And I tried to do some homework and looking chronologically on the dates. I took Reed, for example, and Pace, what used to be DEC and what used to be Reed, trying to find out on the search engine on our internet board book when the renovations were done. But I could not get it. I mean, you put in Reed renovations, or, I mean, the dates are all scattered. Do we have files on each building at each school that will give the updates of when renovations were done, what was done, where the asbestos was it removed, and then tested afterwards? Because I've been on this board a long time, and I've just, I mean, where does this asbestos come from? It has to be within from the beginning or whenever, and I don't know how it just keeps cropping up. It happened at the old administration building before it was the police department. And I just, can these asbestos people, can they do it good? I mean, I'm not saying the other construction people did a poor job, but that stuff's dangerous. And after, we had a baseball coach, long time. I mean, he died of lung cancer, and his wife was the first one who mentioned to me about that baseball field office. And I mean, it's no secret. My son's there now, and I'm really interested. And I've thought about doing my own asbestos test, but Scott would find out, and I'd be in real trouble. So, but can we? Once it's done, can we be assured that it's not just there, but every time we do it, whether it's Reed or Pace, can we be assured that it's gone? Is there a way?
Well, thank you for that. I would feel more comfortable in having the experts answer that question. I am certainly not qualified to give a response on that. We can definitely bring them
Yes,
here,
sir.
and we can have them address that with the board.
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, Ms. Fields. I thought you knew everything.
I'm not an expert, but I will.
Thank you.
If Dr. Smith will allow me just to clarify just a little bit. I am definitely not the expert.
Okay, thank you.
But if you touch something, then, and it has, because we test every year, I'm going to speak specifically to the Reed and the Pace. It is not inside. It is the glaze around the windows. And it's starting, I don't know if you've been in old buildings where it starts to crack around the stuff that they use when they put those panes in. So it's starting to crack. So now when the man walked, he could test. They have the machinery and the equipment and test it. So if you renovated inside of a building and you touched something, let's say we touched this column, we're going to take it out. Maybe they framed it up and they didn't disturb it. Once it is disturbed, and now this is disturbing just because of the weather and et cetera. And same thing within some of the paint they used to use, some of the sealant they used to use on the floors, et cetera, some of the things that were in the wall. If you didn't ever bother the wall, you would know perhaps some of the things they had inside to use, kind of like fiberglass and the things they use now. So there are reports on every campus, on campus, for anyone who wants to inspect. We have those at the maintenance office, and so we have we're not the experts, it'll be the experts who do it, but if you disturb something, so places that have been renovated, as we just did the police station, we did quite a bit of abatement. Depending if it's above the ceiling, maybe we didn't bother above the ceiling, so we could still be there. Yeah.
And see, that's what bothers me, because I remember we did a lot of abatement at that administration building. So the windows that, and I'm sorry to take up time, the windows that Reed could have become contaminated over the years. Like, I'm thinking, well, the windows were there when all the rooms were done.
Yes, ma'am.
And resized and all of that. So, but it wouldn't have shown up in a test
Correct.
until it got cracked or
It started to
bumped or-
disintegrate now, and so that's...
Okay, all right, thank you.
Carla, I'd like to say, as my responsibility when I worked for the district as risk manager, I recall 3 times that the administration building was, but she is correct. If you don't touch that area, if you don't pull up the floor where there's small tiles, then you don't have to abate that area. So you only have to deal with what is being remodeled. But I know with the police station now, it was a big remodel, so my estimate is that it was done very well.
Well, I hope so.
Yes, ma'am. Thank
For
you.
the chief's sake and all our officers' sakes.
Are there any other questions, comments, or discussion?
I have a question.
Trustee Colton?
Thank you, Mrs. Fields, for your report. You had mentioned asbestos abatement plan.
Yes, ma'am.
So can you describe the plan or give more details about the plan?
The plans, of course, have all of the, every campus and buildings have them. We maintain those. Our consultant checks once or twice a year, depending. If we find that we think that there's something, we'll call them, and they come and do the testing. They do the sample, they take the test. So in the plans, it talks about, it has probably the map of the school, how old the school is, the possibility of the materials that were used back in 1957, 1963, et cetera. So kind of the makeup of the building. And then along with that, any type of inspections, any type of re-inspections that we've had, whether we passed, where there were any type of problem areas. And so again, this is it kind of gives an overview, and we have to report that each year. Yes, ma'am.
So do we report it to the TCEQ, or what's the agency that regulates?
Regulates is the Texas Department of Health.
Okay. And so the $1,500 fine, will they fine us, or is that liquidated damages will charge the contractor if they don't finish?
We're hoping they're going to finish, because they know. They had to, first of all, they have to notify the state on our behalf that we found something, we're going to mitigate it, and then they've given them the window. The contractors, the vendors that are going to do this, they gave us how many man-hours, I think you saw that, how many hours, how long they think it's going to take. The consultant, working with them, because they're going to be on-site managing it, they also have what they think how long it will take. They'll take the samples, et cetera. So that's the deadline that the state has, we've said and said it's appropriate. If something would happen, then they were going to fine us $1,500 per day. So I have a feeling that's a good incentive for us and for them to be able to get it completed by that time. I don't anticipate any difficulties.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Because it's very well thought out.
Thank you very much.
Great questions. Any other questions, comments, or discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please raise your right hand. Any opposed? Motion passed 7-0. Thank you, Mrs. Fields.
Thank you,
We appreciate
Board.
you.
Thank you.
Okay, we will now move to action item E, Elementary Leadership Academy School Choice Initiative, and the presenter is Dr. Karen Halachka.
Good evening, Madam President, Board of Trustees, and Dr. Smith. I'm just going to wait till the presentation came up. There we go. Last month, we introduced to you a new choice initiative we are looking to implement during the 2021-2022 school year at Acton Elementary, the Acton Leadership Academy. As part of the quilt of choices we've designed in Duncanville ISD, the Acton Leadership Academy would provide rigorous, enriching academic leadership experiences in grades kindergarten through 4th grade. We can go ahead and change the slide. There we go. The program components will target the development of ethical and civic-minded student leaders that are empowered to serve and influence their local and global community. In addition to the namesake of Charles Acton, a great community leader, Acton Elementary was selected due to its eligibility under the School Action Fund grant, its capacity and location, and the campus's feeder pattern to the STEAM Academy. Next slide. Utilizing a campus design team, the Leadership Academy program will be based on the Leader in Me framework. All grades will be participating, and we will utilize the current staff to create and implement this choice opportunity for our students. The School Action Funds will cover all startup costs, and the programmatic framework will be designed for sustainability for future years. The campus will focus on teaching leadership principles, creating a leadership culture, while ensuring the academic systems align with district initiatives as well as leadership experiences. Next slide. As shared last month, the campus committee will be fully developed and begin meeting regularly and planning with the support of district facilitation. We will determine which purchases need to be made and get them done within the grant year, which ends July 2021. The Leader in Me framework will be developed and staff provided training to support implementation. Just as a reminder, we will also include Hastings and Alexander in these training opportunities since they were also eligible campuses under the School Action Grant. A communication and marketing plan will be created to tell our story and to encourage enrollment. And the school community, including parent and teacher voice, will create a portrait of an Acton leader based on grade levels. We, of course, are very excited about this new opportunity for our students, and on behalf of the administration, would like to recommend for approval the implementation of the Leadership Choice Program at Acton Elementary for the 2021-2022 school year. Dr. Goodman or myself are happy to answer any questions that you may have at this time.
Do I have a motion in regards to the Elementary Leadership Academy School Choice Initiative?
So moved. I'm so excited about it.
Trustee Fahey moved,
Second.
and Trustee Vera Cruz seconded the motion. Are there any questions, comments, or discussion for Dr. Halachka? Trustee Fahey?
Just one comment. This excites me so much, and I wish Mr. Kane and the Youth and Government students were still here, because if we have 5 officers now out of 10, when we start them at Acton Elementary, I mean, we're going to have more and more governors, and it just really excites me, and I'm excited. And thank you, Dr. Smith, because I know you promised us to do things like this, and I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the feedback.
And thank you, Dr. Halachka.
Any other questions, comments, or discussion?
I have a comment. I'm also excited, and I want to join in with Fahey here. That's 5 programs that we'll have here in the district. How exciting is that? I'm excited.
Thank you.
Great. Any other questions, comments, or discussion? Okay. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Opposed? None. Motion passed 7-0. Thank you so much, Dr. Halachka. We appreciate it.
Stay there.
We will now move to to the action agenda item 7E, and the presenter is Dr. Karen Halachka.
I get to stay. So good evening once again, Madam President, Board of Trustees, and Dr. Smith. School improvement monies are allocated for the 3 campuses that were identified as improvement required during the 2018-2019 school year. These include Acton, Alexander, and Hastings Elementary. Since we did not take the STAR test in 2020, these campuses have remained under the school improvement umbrella and received supplemental funding to support turnaround efforts. The district also receives funding to support these 3 schools and the intermediate feeder campuses because the students who were at the 3 elementary campuses in 2018-2019 now attend our intermediate schools. One need these campuses have shared is for more targeted, individualized tutoring for students where the learning loss is more substantial. Due to this identified need, we looked for a partner that is well known in the industry for this type of support with proven results. Big Thought is a nonprofit organization that districts like Dallas ISD and Garland ISD utilize. Their mission is to focus on closing opportunity gaps through various programs and services. Duncanville has used Big Thought for some summer enrichment programs, but this will be our first time to utilize them for their tutoring services. Big Thought will offer tutoring services during the academic school day with an emphasis on math. Acton, Alexander, Hastings, Brandenburg Intermediate, Daniel Intermediate, and Hardin Intermediate will be offered tutoring services 2 times per week for 10 weeks. Across these schools, 120 identified students will receive this opportunity in small groups of a 5-to-1 ratio. Due to the impact of COVID and the learning loss students have experienced, we believe this is a valuable and necessary intervention. It is also an added support to our teachers that are already working tirelessly to close the gaps students have acquired during the pandemic. Although tutoring is offered at all campuses by our teachers, this is an added layer of intervention for specific students at these eligible campuses. Therefore, the administration recommends that the board approve the agreement with Big Thought for tutoring services in the amount noted in the attached agreement.
So moved, sorry.
Thank you. Trustee Savage Martin moved.
Second.
Trustee Vera Cruz seconded the motion. Are there any questions, comments, or discussion?
Madam President, I have a question.
Trustee Vera Cruz?
It's a comment, I'm sorry. So you said 2 things, intervention, and you mentioned the fact that they are providing the service. So I want to just make sure our teachers will not be involved. They're going to come on our campus?
They actually will do it virtually because we've asked them to do it virtually. Our students can either be on campus or virtual because we've got so many students in both categories. And so what we have to provide is a district person to also be there to monitor, just to kind of make sure to be watching over our students as well. But they will provide the tutoring, and it could even be a paraprofessional that are with the students at that time. But it is virtual.
Okay, thank you for your clarification.
Mm-hmm.
Trustee Ivory?
How were the 120 students selected? What was the criteria?
Great question. It's really based on the campus need. So every campus has been able to determine their 20 students that would be served. And so the 20 students could actually be some of their lowest performing students, but it also could be students that they are trying to get to that higher level, from meets to masters or approaches to meets. And so they were able to select the groups based on data to identify which 5 students would be in each level. Most of the campuses has focused on their star grade levels, but some of our elementary campuses are really targeting their second grade students.
So if these students are part of the ones who struggled with virtual class during the regular school year, I'm just wondering if we selected those same students who struggled during the regular school year, what are we like contracting with parents? What are we doing to make sure that they take advantage of the additional tutoring through Big Thoughts? I think it's a great idea, but I'm just wondering about the selection process and what kind of support have we connected with the parent so that we get the most out of the tutoring services that we're offering. Did I confuse you?
No, I think I've got you. Big Thought will actually provide notification to those parents, and the parents have to commit to their students' participation, because we do know how important it is for the students to really take advantage of this opportunity. The campuses also are utilizing that as a factor in determining which students this best fits their needs for. So if a student maybe does not do well in the virtual environment, then this may not be the best opportunity for them. So we have other opportunities that might work better for them that are more in a face-to-face setting with their teacher or through another program that we have.
And do we have some type of pre-assessment and ending assessment so that we can just kind of evaluate where it helped or if it helped?
What we are utilizing is our district assessment data. So the pre-assessment, they just finished District Assessment 2, as well as their interim online assessments, and so, which are kind of like a benchmark for STAR. We're utilizing that as a factor in determining, and then what we'll use as our post-assessment are our District Assessment 4 or our STAR test. One of those will be the post-test to measure the growth.
So we'll be using different?
It depends on so if it's a STAR grade, so second grade doesn't have an interim assessment and a STAR assessment. So we would have to use our district assessments for those students.
Mm-hmm.
But if they're a STAR grade level student, we can use the interim assessment and the STAR test.
Okay, so we'll have the data after the 10 weeks?
Yes.
Okay. And the time of day that they're doing this, is this after school?
No, it's during the day, and so it depends on every campus. They were able to identify, Big Thought was very accommodating, and they were able to, campuses were able to work with the student schedules and their campus schedules to identify the best time so that it didn't pull them out of another academic classroom.
So this will be during an elective period or, okay.
Yeah. And a fun fact about Big Thought that I did not even know until well after I'd started working this is our contact is actually a Duncanville ISD parent that works for Big Thought. So his child goes to Maryfield.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions, comment, or discussion for Trustee Colton?
Yes, ma'am. How do we arrive at pricing information? Are these standard rates or?
When it comes to tutoring, for external tutoring of this nature, yes, these are pretty common rates. If you really kind of narrow it down to per student amounts, you're talking at about $32 per student per session. So when you kind of do the math on that, and it's pretty standard with other tutoring services. We did consider another program, but they would only offer one-to-one tutoring, and this would allow us to do small group.
So is the groups of 5, is that going to be standard, or is it no more than, is that average?
We will do 5 to 1. That's the standard that they want, is a 5 to 1 ratio, and we will make sure we fill up those 5.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments, or discussion? Okay, great questions. Thank you, Dr. Halachka. All in favor, please raise your right hand. Any opposed? Motion passed 7-0. Thank you again, Dr. Halachka.
Thank you.
We will now move to information and discussion items. The first item is the budget review, and the presenter is Dr. Ed Bigby.
Madam President, as Dr. Bigby comes up, a couple things I wanted to share as he gets into his presentation that has occurred basically since spring break. One, you may have heard the news on the Hold Harmless. Of course, we all know what our enrollment has been like in ADA across the state. And so just prior to us leaving for spring break, the commissioner came out and said that school districts would be held harmless from their attendance challenges throughout the rest of the school year. That's huge for us. Dr. Bigby's going to give you more details on what that means for us financially. The second thing that I wanted to share with you is the federal money. You may have heard a lot recently about the President Biden and the money that he has allocated for school districts. I had a conversation today with Senator West, who is up in Austin, and the conversation centered around the federal money that's allotted for school districts. For us in Duncanville, the first round of federal money is right at about $11 million. And the third round is right at $26 million. What Senator West is advocating for his constituents is that this money be used for school districts. What the history has been and what the challenge we're dealing with now is that typically the state supplants this and uses this money for something else to cover in their budget, to fill a hole in their budget. Dr. Bigby is going to talk about the deficit that exists at the state level. And so we're lobbying, Senator West has lobbied on our behalf, because while we know we won't get 100% of that, if we got half of $26 million, think of what we could do to continue to close the gap instructionally coming out of this COVID scenario. So those are two things that are huge for us, part of our budget process, and wanted to kind of share that with you as we begin the presentation. Thank you, Dr. Bigby.
Thank you. Hello again. Here's the exciting part of the day. A lot of the stuff you'll see is stuff that you saw last month because it hasn't changed. And a few things have, and as Dr. Smith said, some of them have actually been positive. We're kind of holding our breath on some of that, but we like the positive ones. Next slide, please. This is the budget timeline that I just keep knocking the dates off as we get further along. The only real difference is that initially we're going to ask the campuses to have their budgets back turned in by the 22nd, or today. We've moved that to April the 9th to give them more time to do that. So, and even that can be extended. We don't want to put any kind of pressure on the campuses. They have enough to do without worrying about budgets. The rest of it stayed pretty well the same. Okay, next slide, please. Representative Huberty is, well, I'll just leave it at that. Here's some quotes that he had, these same quotes that you saw last time. Said you got schools that didn't open March through half of September, and that's significant savings. Once again, we talked about the fact that most of our money's tied up in people, and so those costs remained. If taxpayers actually knew how much money school districts had in their fund balances, they'd be alarmed. And he said, we know there's at least $15 billion, and we think it's higher than that right now, and that's double what the state of Texas has. The last numbers I saw, the state of Texas had $11.6 billion in the rainy day fund, which isn't quite half of $15 billion. So, not sure where he went to school, but that didn't quite work. Next slide, please. As you know, there's been all kinds of articles and about the fact that we're going to get paid for students that aren't here, and we were real concerned about it until just that week before that the hold harmless wouldn't be extended, but better heads prevailed in Austin, and they did do that. Next slide. Once again, Representative Dutton wanted to make sure that we were trying to recruit and bring back all the kids that weren't here, and we've put together a list and are continuing to do so of things that have taken place in our district. One was the Operation Connection, where we actually went to homes, calls from campuses, campus visits, cards, letters home, and student services is constantly contacting students to try to to get them either back in attendance or back enrolled in the school. So there's been quite an effort in Duncanville. Can't speak for the other districts, but our district's worked very hard to bring those students back. Okay, next slide. Virtual learning's been a pretty well discussed topic because we've all gotten into it now. Before, it was just the Texas Virtual School Network, but every district now is doing virtual learning. And current law says if you want to teach rather than under the pandemic, then all the courses had to go through the Texas Virtual School Network. And the student must be on campus 4 hours a day if we want any kind of funding under current law for them. So there's no opportunity really beyond the pandemic situation for us to offer virtual instruction. House Bill 1468 says the district can develop curriculum and provide instruction through virtual courses, but only those that aren't provided by the Texas Virtual School Network, so that's not much help. And Senate Bill 258, if we do get to a situation where we can actually provide some appropriations for students that want to learn virtually but don't have the equipment at home or the internet connectivity, that there could be some funding for that. Of course, they're all just bills right now, they're not laws, but they're out there. Next slide. This is one that Senator West has just introduced that actually trumps most of the rest of them, so we're kind of cheering for this one. It actually allows any school district to provide virtual learning for any grade level, elementary through high school, to a student that desires to have virtual learning, but it doesn't require that it be offered at all levels. So it gives the district the opportunity, if we wanted to offer it at just a high school or any other combination, then if the bill passed, that would allow that. It also gives us full funding for those students, so it wouldn't have to be a part of the school day that they're actually on campus. And there's nothing in the bill that requires the district to go through the Texas Virtual School Network. It allows you to develop your own curriculum, which we've had to do anyway this year. So Senator West is really put a bill forward that could help not just us, but all the other districts that have gotten into virtual education, and so many students that are actually desire that. So it gives us the opportunity to at least consider whether we want to offer virtual instruction next year. Once again, it hasn't passed, but if you talk to Senator West, pat him on the back and push it forward if you can. Next slide. This is the Old Harmless that Dr. Smith talked about. And if you want to qualify for the last 3-6 weeks, it's all done in 6-week periods. Periods 4 through 6, then the percent of students in the 6 weeks have to be equal to or higher than the number of students that were actually on campus in October. In October, 34.1% of our enrollment were actually on campus. So if we want to be held harmless for the last 3 6 weeks, then during the 6 weeks, at least 34.1% of our students need to be enrolled on campus. I did some checking with the last 4 or 5 reports, and some of those have been over 40% that were actually on campus. None were below the 34.1. And I think there's other people that are coming back onto campus. So we'll watch that very closely because it's a tremendous amount of funding, but we will really push it in the 6 weeks. If you remember, the initial hold harmless was for the first 2 6 weeks. And now they've said if you want to be held harmless for the third 6 weeks, then you have to have 20% more than that October date on campus, which in our case would be 54.1, unless you applied for an attestation back in October, which we did, and we have that on record. So our third 6 weeks is covered, and there shouldn't be any problem with us meeting that 34.1 or more, so that our 4th, 5th, and 6th 6 weeks are covered, and it's a substantial amount of money difference. So we were really happy they put it in. I understand why they would put a a qualifier on it because there was so much dissension about, well, you're not trying to get kids back in school. So I think hopefully it satisfied everyone that was concerned about us getting overfunded, which that would be a joke, wouldn't it? Anyway, any questions on that? I know that's a lot of numbers. And by the way, I checked the state, and some of the districts in October had 0.4% of their students on campus, less than 1% on campus. So if they get 0.5, then they're held harmless. But we think we did pretty good getting the 34% on campus. There are some districts that are up around 90%, but their demographics are much different than what ours are. Okay, next slide, please. These are the same numbers I gave you last time that showed what our funding would be at all these different levels. We budgeted 11,280 average daily attendance. On January 6th, it was 10,880. It's actually down a little bit from that. And the hold harmless that we've been assigned is 11,165. They based that off of 95% of last year's. Is how they determined what our hold harmless number would be. Okay, next slide, please. You can see at our budget, we would have, if we'd had 11,280 ADA, we would have had $62 million in state funding. With the hold harmless, we'll lose about $3 million, but without it, we would have lost almost $5 million. So it saved us about $2 million by the hold harmless going through, and that's a good deal. We were real concerned about trying to cover the part without the hold harmless. Okay, next slide, please. As part of what Dr. Smith was talking about, the two appropriation bills in both houses have $120 billion in them. The comptroller says you can have $113 billion, which is $7 billion short. And once again, this is where that federal money is probably going to come in to balance the budget. It's been done numerous times. Okay, next slide. Both bills fully fund House Bill 3. There's a $3.1 billion increase in the foundation school program, which, once again, a portion of that could come from the stimulus funds. There's $1 billion for property tax compression. Remember, each year our local rate is compressed, so the state has to make that money up. $70 million for transition to online STAR testing, and there's no expenditures from their savings, $11.6 billion rainy fund in either one of the bills. Okay, next slide. Federal funding, this is what Dr. Smith was talking about. They still haven't dispersed all the funding from the second round of stimulus, and then the next round is coming, so the state's held on to that money. Once again, I think they're probably doing it because of the deficit at the state level. And as Dr. Smith said, they can use these to supplant state funds. And basically, it's a washout of our funding. It just creates a lot of accounting and drives the auditors crazy, but that's why we pay them. Okay, next slide. Representative Huberty, again, I know you've heard that name before, has filed a bill that would require the commissioner to increase the district's local share or reduce the district's entitlement if it failed to spend unobligated excess funds, in other words, fund balance. And what he's calling excess is more than 110 days of operating expenses. Our annual operating budget this year is $125 million. That's a daily requirement of $344,926 a day to operate the district. So that would allow us to keep a fund balance of $37,941,000, and our last fund balance was $67 million. So you see there's about a $30 million difference between what Representative Huberty says we should be able to keep and what we actually have. I underlined and bolded the word unobligated because that's the language in the bill. And I think we as a district have a lot of plans for the future, and we can obligate a whole bunch of that money. We're building the TLC out of those funds. There's all kinds of roofing stuff that needs to be done. So we can always write a plan to obligate $30 million worth of that fund balance. So unless they put something different in the language of the bill, then I think we'll be fine with our fund balance. We just have to be creative. And that's what these kind of laws do. They make you creative. That's probably as calm a word as I use there. Anyway, that bill's out there. And typically every session somebody goes after fund balance. So this is not unique. Okay, next slide. Once again, this is an estimate. We had a $67 million fund balance at the end of last fiscal year. You allowed us to do the $2,000 supplemental payment to our employees, which was $3.7 million. You allowed us to purchase $2.8 million worth of technology, PPE orders or personal protective equipment. We've spent nearly $900,000 on that. We're still planning on losing the funds from our ADA drop, which I would say this is by far a maximum that would come out of fund balance. We applied for a grant that should replace about $2.1 million of that technology purchases, which actually the funding should have already arrived, but it hasn't. But we're keeping tabs on that. So just so you won't be totally surprised, there will be a change in fund balance. Hopefully our expenditures will be less than what we budgeted, and revenue will stay up. And so it won't be quite that bad, and we'll offset it. But you just need to know as we're going through that there's that possibility. Okay, next slide. I believe that's it. Next slide. I think that's the end of it. I'd be happy to entertain questions, try to answer anything you may have. It's an ever-changing world, and the legislation will really start in another month or so. Will get pretty hot and heavy, and we'll see a lot of bills consolidated and a lot of things tacked on to bills that aren't necessarily germane to that bill. But we have two sources that are keeping us up with the legislation. Moken Casey does a really good job daily of updating us, and they do workshops with us, virtual workshops, so that we can, when different scenarios are brought through the legislature, we can work and see what that's going to do for us. So, we're trying to stay on top of that. As Dr. Smith said, Senator West is very eager to get input from the school superintendents, and he's an institution down there, so it really helps having him represent us. So, answer any questions, I'll be quiet.
Are there any questions, comments, or discussion for Dr. Bigby? No? Thank you, Dr. Bigby.
Thank you.
We will move to the information discussion agenda, item B, House Bill 3 Reading Academies. The presenter is Dr. Kathy Sewell.
Good evening again. I'm here to provide you a brief overview of our House Bill 3 Reading Academy Training Program. Next slide. So the first question that comes to mind is, what's a reading academy? Well, it is a literacy training program for teachers and campus administrators that are assigned to serve students in kindergarten, first grade, second grade, and third grade. Also, this training is required by House Bill 3, and this was also passed by the Texas legislature. Across the state, elementary educators will be required to participate in a year-long literacy training program, or a House Bill 3 Reading Academy. They'll either conduct that this year coming up, the 21-22 school year, or in the 22-23 school year. Texas reading scores have been low across the nation with national and with state assessments. As a result of this data, House Bill 3 has mandated that all school districts implement the TEA-designed House Bill 3 Reading Academy Literacy Training Program. The goal for this is that teachers and administrators in all of Texas public schools have consistent training on literacy, thus improving instruction where students achieve at higher literacy levels. Next slide. This slide shows our TEA requirements. Any educator that does provide instruction to students in grades K through 3 are required to complete the Reading Academy training. Again, the last year for that is 2023. The only exceptions, as you can see noted here, are art, music, PE teachers, and districts must document the completion of all of the required training components. Next slide. Okay, this slide shows the types of trainings and the implementation phases that we will have outlined for our school district. The in-person training will be face-to-face instruction in a classroom setting, and participants will receive job-embedded literacy training. They will have coaching sessions to support their work with students also during the school year. The blended training is 100% online, and participants must complete online learning modules. For both training designs, participants are required to submit artifacts of completion of their trainings, and they're also required to submit work samples so that they can be evaluated by our cohort leaders and our contract with our Region 10 Service Center. Here you can see at the top that kindergarten through first grade teachers will be the faculty that will train this next school year. Currently, our district leaders are participating in an online blended learning training this spring. This is in order for us to best prepare for implementation with teachers next year. Elementary principals will also be trained in the 21-22 school year, as you can see on the slide. For implementation, you'll see an overview of next year's dates. For the in-person teacher training, teachers will participate in July to complete the foundational work so that the literacy strategies and training can be implemented with students at the very beginning of the school year. This will allow for students to benefit as soon as possible. Other items regarding this plan include that teachers will only be out of class for 1 day of instruction for training, and teachers will also receive extra duty pay for the time that they spend allowing for compensation for their training time in the summer and throughout the year. Next slide. So this slide highlights our next steps. Currently, our Director of Early Childhood has met with our elementary principals this past week before spring break to go over the Reading Academy requirements and to answer any questions in terms of planning and implementation. Our Early Childhood Department will host a Zoom meeting with our K and first grade teachers after school in the month of April. And so in this orientation, they will go over program components, training dates, and the extra duty pay schedule for compensation. The training calendar and completion dates will be created in May, and then finally, in July, we'll begin our training. Next slide. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have regarding this.
Are there any questions, comments, or discussion for Dr. Sewell? Thank you, Dr. Sewell.
Absolutely. Thank you.
We will move to information discussion agenda item C, COVID-19 pandemic and efforts update, and the presenter is Dr. Mark Smith.
Thank you, Madam President. As you know, each month we update you on key COVID-related information where we are in the district. I've asked Dr. Halachka to address the student side, and then Ms. Kathleen Brown will address the staff side.
Good evening, Madam President, trustees, and Dr. Smith. It is my pleasure to share with you this evening our ongoing plans related to the COVID-19 pandemic and how we're addressing its impact on our staff and students. Next slide. We believe that keeping you informed during this time is important as we work in partnership to excel as a district despite the pandemic. Tonight, we'll share important data points regarding our enrollment, attendance, COVID cases, methods of instruction, as well as provide an update on our COVID testing and vaccines. Next slide. As we do each month, I will begin by giving you an update on our current enrollment and attendance numbers. I do want to note that the data in tonight's presentation was updated today to give you the most current information. Therefore, the numbers in your board book may be slightly different. Our student enrollment continues to remain steady with 11,832 students currently enrolled. We are continuing to focus on addressing student attendance through intervention efforts and encouraging parents to monitor their child's engagement. During the first week in March, campuses shared with senior leaders their efforts to connect with families regarding attendance, and they have gone above and beyond in their efforts to really re-engage our students and keep them connected. However, we are seeing a slight attendance decline at both high school and the middle school campuses. At the district, we've conducted 1,145 home visits and will continue to work to ensure our students are attending school to help mitigate the learning loss and to monitor the social emotional wellness of our students. Next slide. The method in which students have chosen to learn was still below 50% for the third 9 weeks, but we are hoping to get over the 54.1% for the fourth 9 weeks, which, as you have heard, is the requirement for our hold harmless eligibility. The window for the fourth 9 weeks opened on March 8th and closes this evening. We have had 350 students request to return in person for the fourth 9 weeks and are requiring 874 students to return in person due to excessive absences. These students do have an opportunity to appeal through a medical exemption, but we believe these two groups in combination will move us to the 54.1% required for hold harmless. Next slide. As mentioned by Dr. Bigby earlier this evening, on March 4th, Governor Abbott and the TEA announced that the state will provide a hold harmless to Texas school districts for the rest of the 2020-2021 school year. This means that funding will be made available to school systems in Texas that have seen enrollment and attendance declines because of COVID-19, as long as districts maintain or increase current levels of on-campus attendance. Districts will be funded on attendance in line with the projections made prior to the pandemic. The governor emphasized the importance of getting kids back into the classrooms for instruction, but districts will not be penalized financially for the absence of students during the 2020-2021 school year. As previously shared, the district has already taken active steps to find our unengaged students, and we're working with each campus to continue to make sure every student is engaged online or returning to in-person learning. Next slide. Last month, you saw this same slide which shares all of the data we are tracking related to student COVID cases. We highly anticipated a spike after the snow days, but we're pleased to see that that did not happen. In fact, we've seen a significant decline in our student COVID cases over the past month and currently have less than 10 students that have been on campus in the past 14 days. We are hopeful this does not change after our spring break, but we are continuing to maintain high safety standards, including the requirement of staff and students to wear masks and maintain social distancing of 6 feet to the greatest extent possible. Even with the modifications to the CDC requirements, our efforts will remain consistent due to the number of cases in Dallas County. We will make some considerations of the social distancing space when determining our close contacts. As previously shared, we do send through email a campus-wide notification anytime we have a positive on-campus student case, and we also notify anyone that was exposed or in close contact. Our website dashboard is maintained with current on-campus cases. I'll now turn it over to Ms. Kathleen Brown to discuss our staff COVID numbers.
Good evening.
Prior to spring break, a virtual meeting was held with Kennemer Middle School staff to address their concerns and share information related to COVID-19 and the impact on their campus. We also discussed the COVID data for this campus in relationship to the overall district data and the steps the campus could proactively take to implement COVID-19 protocols at work and outside of work to slow the spread at their campus. Staff attendance at the meeting was remarkable, with over 90% of staff in attendance. It is our hope that the information and data shared gave the campus the clarity they were seeking, as well as provided the data needed to inform their practice moving forward. We'll now take a look at our staff COVID numbers district-wide. On last month, we reviewed the information on this slide related to employees. At this point, we've had a total of 322 positive cases in staff members since the start of the pandemic. Thank you. Just before spring break, there were 11 active positive cases in staff members. I'm happy to report tonight that we only have 3 active positive cases in staff members district-wide, so we're really excited about that. The winter freeze also helped tremendously to slow the spread of COVID in district employees. This is definitely the direction we'd like to see our data continue to trend. Our data has remained steady in the percentage of employees who have been exposed outside of work versus at work, with most exposures being outside of work. In addition to continuing to implement safety protocols, our employees have also started receiving vaccinations through multiple opportunities that have been provided to the district. I will now turn it back over to Dr. Halachka to discuss more about staff testing and vaccination opportunities.
Thank you, Mrs. Brown. Starting in January, we'll go ahead and go to the next slide. There you go. Thank you. Starting in January, we were able to initiate our COVID testing program for employees and have tested 296 staff members since the testing clinic was open. Of the 296 tested employees, we have had 12 employees that have tested positive. We have seen a reduction in the number of appointments, but are continuing to offer this service to our staff members. Last month, we discussed our partnership with the Caring Foundation of Texas to provide vaccines to our staff members. Since that time, educators have been identified as a priority group, finally. And with that, our partnership opportunities have increased. We have partnered with Parkland Hospital to provide Duncanville ISD classroom teachers COVID-19 vaccines. Teachers were required to register to receive a vaccination Thursday, March 4th to Friday, March 12th. Appointments were able to be set during this window or after this window for a time most convenient to our staff members. Counselors and librarians were also included in this opportunity. As you can see from the picture that you saw earlier this evening as well, we even had one of our very own staff members recognized on their news. We have also partnered with the Charlton Methodist Hospital to offer vaccines to all of our employees, and as Dr. Smith shared earlier, as of today, we will be offering staff members vaccines on site on Friday of this week. There will be 1,000 vaccines available, which will easily cover all of the employees that wish to be vaccinated. Since we were just notified today, we're still working out some of the logistics and details with the hospital, but are excited about being able to provide this opportunity to our staff members. Last slide. This concludes our COVID-19 pandemic plan update for this month. It is always a privilege to share with you the efforts we're making to ensure our schools are safe for our staff and our students. Thank you, and I am happy to answer any questions you may have at this time.
Are there any questions, comments, or discussion? Trustee Savage Martin.
Yes. Which vaccine will the staff be receiving? The one vaccination or good?
It's Pfizer. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's
so it'll
two.
be two. They will be coming back in April.
Good.
To do the second.
Very good. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments, or discussion? Trustee Colton?
I have a question regarding the maximum capacity that we could take in our classrooms. Do you?
So, with how the space within the classroom?
Yes, considering the social distance.
Well, our classrooms right now, what we have provided to make sure that they are safe is they're not all at 6 feet now, but what we do provide is the dividers like you guys have. We also require the wearing of masks at all times. And anytime that students are in a place where they can't wear their mask, like at lunch or during snack, we make sure that is in an area that's large enough for them to be that distance of that 6 feet apart, which is all in alignment with the CDC recommendations.
Okay, so I guess all 12,000 students, if they chose to come back.
Yes, we would make sure they all had those dividers, but right now we're just hoping to get to the 54.1. And I think that we're probably going to get there, but I don't anticipate that all students will be returning this school year.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments, or discussion? Great questions, by the way. Thank you, Dr. Lachka. And thank you, Mrs. Brown. We will now move to communication from citizens, and we do not have any communications from citizens, but before we close out this meeting, I would like to congratulate our Duncanville High School boys basketball team and the coaches for bringing home another state championship. I would also like to congratulate every student, teacher, and staff member that was recognized tonight for their accomplishments. And finally, I want to say thank you to my fellow board members, every donor, Dr. Smith and his team, everyone who contributed to our coat drive and the food and gift card drive for the families affected by the fire and winter storm. Duncanville ISD, we are Deville. So thank you all for being here. We appreciate you all, and being that there are no further items to discuss, this meeting is adjourned.